Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Sofia, and today I want to talk about something that I find really interesting about Portuguese culture, and that is the Portuguese relationship with Portugal itself is very complex. You might have noticed something quite strange. We can be extremely critical of our own country. We complain about Portugal, we complain about the government, we complain about bureaucracy, we complain about salaries, we complain about the cost of living, we complain about the weather. Sometimes, honestly, it sounds like we don't really like Portugal at all. But then let someone from another country say something negative about Portugal, and suddenly we completely change rules. So, apparently, there are rules. And that's why I want to explore in today's video the topic of sort of self deprecating culture in Portugal. But before we get into it, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can also use and join the membership space. The idea behind the membership is to give you access to content that helps you develop a deeper understanding of Portuguese language and culture, and hopefully makes your learning journey easier and more accessible. As I've mentioned before, as much as I would love to share all of my free content, I also need your support to keep creating these videos. So thank you for spending your time here. And thank you also to those of you who support the channel through the membership. I really appreciate it. And now let's get into today's video. The Portuguese habit of complaining. So let's start with something very similar. Imagine you ask a Portuguese person, "Do you like Portugal?" They might say, "Of course I do." And then 5 minutes later, they start, "Portugal is too small, nothing works here, everything is bureaucracy, the salaries are terrible, you can find a decent job, all the young people leave, we are always behind other European countries." And they will say all of this with complete confidence. And sometimes they will even make jokes about Portugal. They will compare Portugal to other countries and say, "Look at them. They actually know how to do things." Or, "Of course, this would only happen in Portugal." That last sentence is particularly Portuguese. Something goes wrong, so in Portugal. Only in Portugal. The train is late, so in Portugal. You have to fill out 5 different forms for something that should take 5 minutes, so in Portugal. Something doesn't work the way it should, so in Portugal. And yet we love Portugal. That's the interesting part, because this criticism doesn't necessarily mean that Portuguese people hate their country. Quite often, it's almost the opposite. It's kind of a self deprecating national identity. We know our country's problems because we live here. We experience them, we complain about them, and because we are familiar with them, we are comfortable making fun of them. It's almost like making fun of a member of your own family. You can tell everyone exactly what's annoying you, but if someone else says something about it, suddenly you are like, "Excuse me, don't talk about my country like that." And I think I can say it, you can. This is where Portuguese paradox becomes really funny and interesting. A Portuguese person can spend an entire dinner explaining why Portugal is dysfunctional. They can tell you about bureaucracy, they can complain about salaries, they can complain about politicians, they can complain about infrastructure. They can tell you that young Portuguese people are leaving the country because they don't see enough opportunities. They can basically give you a 45-minute presentation about everything that is wrong with Portugal. But then a foreigner says, Portugal isn't very developed. And suddenly, well, actually, and now we are getting a PowerPoint presentation defending Portugal. Actually, Portugal is one of the safest countries in Europe. Actually, the quality of life here is very good. Actually, Portuguese people are very welcoming. Actually, our food is amazing. Actually, we have a very rich history. Actually, you should learn more about Portugal before you can make that statement. And I'm thinking, where was all this patriotism 10 minutes ago? Because 10 minutes ago, you were telling me that nothing works. Why does this happen? I think one reason is that there is a difference between self criticism and external criticism. When Portuguese people criticize Portugal, they are speaking from their experience. They know the country, they know the culture, they know the history, they know the problems, they've experienced the bureaucracy, they have dealt with the system, so they complain. There, there's a certain intimacy behind that criticism and perhaps a little bit of entitlement. I don't know. It's I know this country. I live here. I know we are capable of and I know where we fall short. But when someone from outside criticizes Portugal, it can be very different because now the criticism can sound less like we have a problem and more like your country is inferior. And that's when the defensive reaction can appear. Pride and insecurity can exist together, and that I think is where things become particularly interesting. Portuguese identity can contain both pride and insecurity at the same time. Portugal has this incredibly strong history. We have a language spoken across different continents. We have a very distinctive culture, cuisine, music, architecture, traditions, and literature. There is a lot to be proud of it, but at the same time, Portugal has often been perceived, especially within Europe, as a smaller country, both geographically and economically. And that can create this complicated relationship with the national identity. You can be proud of where you are from while simultaneously believing that your country could be doing much better. So you might hear a Portuguese person say, Portugal is a beautiful country, but, and then comes a list: economy, salaries, bureaucracy, housing, political system, opportunities. There is always a but. And that but is important because it tells you something. The criticism often comes from a place of wanting Portugal to be better. The we can complain, you can't mentality. And I think national identity can work in a similar way. Portuguese people can say Portugal is a mess, but if someone else is say Portugal is a mess, the response can be, okay, but who asked you? Or honestly, I think that's quite funny because underneath the criticism, there is still an attachment. You don't defend something, you feel completely indifferent about it. The fact that you can be frustrated with something and still become defensive when someone else attacks, it actually tells you that there is an emotional connection to it. So, do Portuguese people actually dislike Portugal? Absolutely no. I don't think that's the right way to understand it. I think many Portuguese people have a complicated relationship with their own country. They can be disappointed by it, they can be frustrated, they can joke about it, they can compare it negatively with other countries. They can even say, I want to leave. But then they leave and suddenly they miss the food, they miss the family, they miss the language, they miss the little things, they miss the way people interact. perhaps just in general, the Portuguese way of life. And sometimes they even start defending Portugal from abroad because it's the Portuguese paradox. So perhaps the Portuguese relationship with Portugal isn't really we love or we hate, it's a bit more complicated than that. So the next time you hear a Portuguese person complaining about Portugal, don't necessarily assume that they don't love their country. They might actually be expressing a very particular kind of affection. Because sometimes saying Portugal is a mess doesn't really mean I don't care about Portugal. It can actually mean I care about Portugal enough to wish it was better. But remember one very important rule: a Portuguese person can criticize, more complicated if you do it, at least not in front of them. So, this was a little note on something that I find very peculiar about Portuguese culture, and perhaps some of you might have encountered this as well. So, leave in the comment box below how was your experience, or if you are Portuguese watching this video from your perspective, do you resonate with this? Do you find some truth here or not? Leave in the comment box below. Please be gentle. And also, if you have any questions or feedback you would like to see expressed in my future videos, feel free also to drop by. And just to say hi as well, I appreciate a lot that you watched this video until the end. I hope to see you again. Até já!